Hey, Carmine Appice here from Vanilla Fudge, Rod Stewart, Cactus, Bet Broken Appice, Blue Murder, King Cobra. Yeah, I'm out of breath. And you're on Boss Side Jive, dude.
His bio reads like a who's who of rock and roll. So let's welcome Carmine Appice to Barside Jive. Hey, Carmine.
Hey, dude, how you doing?
Dude, it's good to have you
You're
back.
in the bar. You're in the bar, huh?
I am in the bar. I've got a nice Carbach Brewing Company blonde out of Houston, Texas.
Oh, nice. I just got a nice water. I'm in my studio. There's my, oh, hold on. There's my drums, if you can see them over there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know, and this
Absolutely.
is the rest of the studio. There's some of the artwork I've done up there.
Oh, that's
the
nice.
drum head, and that's Drum City over there. And there's my proclamation from Los Angeles, and I got all the gold records there. I got a letter from Fred Astaire right over there, you know, and
Wow.
my idol buddy Rich. And, yeah, so this is the guest house in this house we bought in Florida, and I turned it into my studio, and I have a little gym area too that I can work out in, you know.
Oh, very cool.
And then
Yeah.
I have a lake behind. Can you see the lake?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I got grass behind and palm trees. I love it here. I love this.
Is that your man cave?
Yep, I come in here and work, and I'm working on an instrumental album with a kid named Fernando Perdomo, who's somewhat unknown, but he was turned on to me by Tom Dowd, the great producer's family. And Tom was working with this kid before he died. And they called me and said, the kid wants to work with you on some level. So I just put the studio in here. My brother Vinny built the computer for me and set the studio up. And I didn't know how to run it at all, you know. So I figured this would be a good opportunity to work with somebody,
Right.
you know, and learn how to run it. So we're like 10 tracks deep now into this album.
Wow. Awesome.
And we mixed them, and I've done stuff with my brother in here. I did the modern drummer thing. Tomorrow we're doing 2 days of video shoots for all my drum books are getting re-released. We're doing 3-minute videos for Amazon and different promotional things. So that's why I got the black, there's a black screen behind me. Behind the black screen are all the gold and platinum records, you know.
Right.
But I figured if they want to insert, you know, some logos, you can't do it over the gold and platinum records.
Right.
This black curtain, you know, so they can do what they want to do when we're editing. But
Right.
but I love it, you know. I just love doing all this stuff. So working with that kid and doing other little odds and ends, I learned how to work my studio, you know. And I got a nasty drum sound coming out of here.
Oh, awesome.
And I'm gonna be working with Freddie Salem from the Outlaws.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's a good friend, and we talked the other day. I told him I got the studio, so he said, "Man, we got to do something together." So we're going to talk later about scheduling something.
Let's talk about Vanilla Fudge for a minute, because
Okay.
you guys were innovative, groundbreaking, trailblazing, and Carmine, on top of all that, you are rock royalty. And
Oh, thank you.
And Carol says that you're just awesome, and I believe everything Carol says.
Oh yeah, Carol's awesome. I
Yeah,
love
she
Carol.
is, and she is a doll.
Carol Ross. We're talking about Carol Ross, who's a
Right.
master PR person that I worked with in the '80s when she was with Kiss. She did all that great PR for Kiss all through like the late '70s and '80s. And now she manages Tommy James, and I still work with her. When I released my book, she did my PR for my book.
Right.
She's awesome.
She's an awesome lady. Well,
Yeah.
she's been very supportive of what I've done here, and I appreciate her. But I want to say that as a drummer for Vanilla Fudge, you set the grooves for the groundbreaking band's '67 psychedelic debut. There was no one that came before you. There was no precedent. That band was totally unique. No rock group up to that point had ever stretched out well-known pop tunes like the Beatles' Eleanor Rigby or Ticket to Ride, and most famously, the Supremes Motown classic, You Keep Me Hanging On, and took them into that world of psychedelia. So tell me, what were you guys thinking?
Well, believe it or not, that really stemmed off of the Rascals. The Rascals were like the big band in New York City at that time. And a group called the Vagrants that had Leslie West in it were doing like a rendition of the Rascals with, you know, they had a 5-piece band instead of, you know, the Rascals had no bass, you know, so they had a 5-piece band. They had Leslie, who was a great guitarist and a great singer.
Oh, yeah.
But they also had another singer, but they had these things called production numbers, which they would slow down songs and stretch them out. And that's where the idea came from. And I was in another band at the time, and Mark Stein and Tim Bogert came to a club where I was, and they asked me to join their group, which was called the Pigeons at the time, because they wanted to get into this realm of music that was going on in Long Island at the time. But the drummer they had would, you know, technically didn't have the chops, or he sang. He didn't sing. So I joined them, and we started doing these arrangements. And the thing we had over everybody else is we had 4 vocals, right? And our musicianship were better all around. I mean, the Vagrants had Leslie West,
Right.
but the rest of the band was just okay.
Right.
You know? We had Mark Stein, who was a monster keyboard player, a great, phenomenal singer. Tim Bogert, who nobody played bass like Tim Bogert, great singer. And Vince Martell was a really good guitar player. Not as good as Leslie per se, but really good, and he sang really well. He had me, who I was technically on top of everything, right, at that point, and I sang.
Right.
So we had 4 vocals and all that, but we did things a little different. We thought, we checked the lyrics out, and we took the lyrics and matched it up with the emotion of the lyrics to the music. Like You Keep Me Hanging On was like, set me free, why don't you, baby? It was like a happy song.
Right.
But it wasn't happy lyrics.
Right.
You know? So we took those lyrics and emotionally transformed them into a slowed down, emotional version of the song where you can really feel the lyrics in the vocal. And then we made all these psychedelic intros and outros and stuff. Same with Eleanor Rigby. Eleanor Rigby talking about a churchyard and a lonely person living in a church. So we created like an eerie kind of vibe for that.
Right.
People get ready.
Right.
It's like a gospel thing. So we made it like a gospel thing, an organ and a vocal, big, you know, choir, gospel choir backgrounds and building up to the end. You know, Ticket to Ride, slowed down, you know, same kind of thing, same thing. You know, and the Beatles sang it was really happy. We made it depressing and psychedelic.
Right.
You know, but that was what we did. But we all know, we noticed when we were playing clubs, when we play normal songs like Ain't Too Proud to Beg, where we just played it normally, and we played You Keep It Hanging On, and people got ready, and Eleanor Rigby, people would come along the front of the stage and stop dancing and watch us, because we were very animated. You know, I was there twirling sticks and all this kind of stuff like an octopus, and Mark Stein's waving his hands around, and Tim looked like a spastic, you know, maniac, and Vin, same thing, you know, and none of the other bands did that.
Right.
You know, most stood there. So we noticed that when we did certain songs that have that emotion in it, people would gather around the stage. So then, especially for Hanging On, and then we did a demo of Hanging On, 1 take mono, 7.5 minutes to change my life. Right? And that became the single, and that's what started the ball rolling.
Wow. Well, you guys were amazing artists, and your creativity level was like through the roof. So
I was through the roof.
it's It can't get more cooler than what you guys were doing.
We were cool. I mean, when we played England at Speakeasy, everybody was there, from Jeff Beck, Yardbirds, Beatles, The Who, anybody who was anyone. Traffic, you know, Stevie Winwood, Jim Capaldi, Keith Moon, all those guys were there. And it was amazing because we were so crazy. George Harrison used to carry that first album around with him to parties, you know.
Wow.
And I kind of heard the rumor, and I confirmed it with Paul McCartney when I was with Rod Stewart. Paul came to our gigs, and I said, Paul, I got to ask you this, you know. And I asked him. He said, oh man, he was championed your album. He said he carried that album everywhere he went in London to all the parties. He put it on the record player himself, you know.
Wow.
So that was like,
that's huge.
Wow. You know, and then back in those days, you used to have the Billboard Awards. Like now they have them on TV. They had them on TV, big deal. Back in then, they used to have it in the magazine, one page. And one year, I think it was 1968 or 69, the Beatles won for vocal group, or 68, I think it was. The Beatles won for vocal group #1, and we were #2.
Wow.
Right? Now, you know, had that been on the big TV, you know, we would have been, you know, seeing us in the audience with tuxedos, you know.
Yeah, right.
Shame, but that was the beginning of it all then. It wasn't a business yet, you know.
Yeah. You know, I've read up on you a little bit, and I was a big fan of the Fudge, but I was also a big fan of Jimi Hendrix, and I know you've hung out with him a little bit. Can you tell me about that?
Oh, yeah, hung out a lot. I mean, I hung out with Jimmy before he was Jimi Hendrix. You know, when I was playing in that other band that I told you about, where I was discovered with Mark and Tim, it was called Thursday's Children, and we had a lead singer named Dean Parrish who ended up having some hit records, especially in England. And so we played this place called the Lighthouse, which was at Broadway and 77th Street on the west side. It was back in those days. It was, remember that movie Panic in Needle Park?
Yeah, yeah.
With Al Pacino, his first movie. You know, he was a druggie, and there was hookers and you know, all kinds of dealers and stuff. That's where it was. It was like that. So we played there, and we played half hour, and then Jimmy James and the Vagabonds would play a half hour, and then about 12 o'clock at night, it'd be like an hour's worth of a guy playing records, and gives both bands a break, because we used to play till 4 in the morning over there, you know. And we come back at 1, and we go on from 1:30, and they go on 1:30 to 2, then 2 to 3:30. Yeah. Wow. Sometimes we get off early if there was no crowd, but it was usually from 9 to 4 was the hours of those club gigs. So on that 1 hour break, which we played probably a whole week with Jimmy doing that, and a couple of times we just hang out. But one time I specifically remember was going up to a black prostitute's apartment, smoking a joint, looking out over Broadway, and Jimmy said, "One day I'm gonna make it," you know. And I said, "Oh, cool." For me, I just wanted to play clubs. I had a drum teacher that made a living playing drums.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
You know, I don't care if I made it. Making records at that point in my life was like the furthest thing from my mind. I had no connections with records. I didn't care about making it. I just wanted to play and make a living. You know, I was making $300 or $400 a week back in 1964, 65. I mean, that was decent money, you know. And that was good. I was 18 years old. I had a brand new '64 Chevy Super Sport I bought myself, playing money, you know, from playing. I built it up. I had racing cams in it, and I used to race it and stuff. You know, I lived with my folks. You know, I was fine. You know.
Right.
And Jimmy was talking about making it. So I said, yeah, good. Then I would go back to playing, and then, you know, the time passes, and we made it with the Fudge, and I see this article. It says, this great new guitar player, Jimi Hendrix, playing with a picture of him playing with his teeth. And he did that in the clubs. And he was always flamboyant looking, except he has his hair slicked back, you know? So I see him with the electric hair.
Right.
And I said, oh my God, this looks like Jimmy James, you know? And sure enough, in some of the press things, it said he was Jimmy James in the old days. And he had played with the Isley Brothers as Jimmy James and this, that. So Oh my God, that's crazy. So when we, in England, fast forward back to when we played the Speakeasy, we were there for 2 or 3 weeks, and he was playing this place called the Savile Theater, which we played the week after he did. We played with the Who there. He played with himself, and I don't know who else opened up for him. And so we're in the Speakeasy. He had a restaurant area, so I see Jimmy in the restaurant area. So I go in there. I say, hey, Jimmy, I look totally different now. You know, I had like English hair, you know, like sort of the way it is now. When I met him before, I had teased up hair. I was like an R&B guy wearing suits and stuff, you know. So I go in there, I'm wearing a red velvet mod jacket, and I'm all mod looking, and he's all flamboyant, you know, Jimi Hendrix with the hair.
Yeah.
So he looked different. And I went and said, hey, Jimmy, how you doing? I'm Carmine, how you doing? He goes, oh, no, nice to meet you. Good. He goes, I said, you know, I met you. We used to play together, and I described it, and he remembered the gig. You know, he said, you know, it was Thursday Children. He remembered it because we had a guitar player named Ronnie Lejack, and he was one of the only other guys in New York that played like Hendrix. You know, bending the strings, he had a distortion bar, he built himself a box. He said, yeah, I remember that gig. You had Ronnie. I said, yeah. He said, wow. He said, what are you doing here? I said, well, we're playing here. He goes, well, who are you with? I said, I'm with Vanilla Fudge. He goes, oh man, I love the Fudge. So I said, wow, that's good to know. So then we struck up a friendship again. And then, you know, we did a load of gigs with him with Vanilla Fudge in 1968 when they re-released Hanging On. Because Atlantic Records screwed up and they made us do this second album, which ruined our career. You know, had we done second album like the first album, we would have gotten as big as the Cream and everybody else. You know, but there's this stupid producer, Ahmet Ertegun, the president of Atlantic, thought it was the best idea since, you know, sliced bread, you know, and it ruined our career. It was terrible.
Why is that?
Because we didn't know any better.
Oh, okay.
You know, we had Shadow Morton was the producer. He did like Leader of the Pack, and he always did songs that concept. But in our case, he really didn't do anything but get our live stage set on record. That's all he did. He didn't like come in and say, well, I want you to arrange this like this or arrange that. Yeah. The whole first album was us.
Right.
That's what we did. Second album was him. And, you know, the beat thing, it was called The Beat Goes On. It would go down, 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 you know, and we'd talk about, you know, Sieg Heil, Black Power, you know, like one speaking to the other. It was depressing. Then he'd say, all right, I want you to guys start in the 1800s or 1300s and create some music that sounds like 1300s, then 1500s, 1600s, 1800s, 1900s, and 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And we went in and we played all that stuff. We didn't even know what we were doing. And then we'd have us talk, you know, and, you know, Mark was quoting stuff from the Bible. I mean, it was just crazy stuff. The only music on there that we liked was we did Fleur Lee's Moonlight Sonata, like Vanilla Fudge. You know, we rocked the fire. And that was cool.
Yeah.
The rest of it was a bunch of horse shit.
Yeah.
And when we heard the whole thing, me and Tim said with the manager, I don't like this. And Mark and Vinny, they don't say this now, but they liked it at the time because they were all like, you know, smoke and get high. Wow, cool concept with Shadow and Army, you know? And when it came out, like those WOR, all these stations in California would play the whole record.
Oh, no.
And people would listen to it on acid and they start calling in saying, take that off, it's giving us a bum trip. You know, so instead of the album going up, I mean, first album went up to number 4 without having a hit single. It was the very first album to ever do that.
Right.
You know, our single, Hanging On, stopped the first time at number 70, you know. So the album came out with the 20, 33, 15, 10, and then into the top 10, number 4. And the only thing that stopped us was, in front of us was Sgt. Pepper, you know. And this album came out, and on the strength of the first one, it went up to number 15, but then it bummed everybody out so bad, it went right down the charts again.
Oh.
So we had, the first album was still on the top 20, so we had to rush in and do a new album quick. So we wrote songs because all these critics were busting our chops that we didn't write songs, even though all the movements we wrote, instrumental movements, was our original music. You know, but they didn't count that because it wasn't a song. Like, you know, the intro to Eleanor Rigby, which is an amazing piece of music, they didn't count that because it was attached to Eleanor Rigby.
Right.
So we went in and wrote albums. The only song that we did from the first album that didn't make it was Season of the Witch. That went on Renaissance. So Renaissance came out and it did okay. It went up to top 15. Season of the Witch went up to maybe 40 on the charts as a single, and the first album was still there. So Renaissance was there, and That Beat Goes On was like number 80. But we had 3 albums in the top 100 at that point. And then in September of '68, they released Hanging On again. And then that's when it went up to number 4. They brought the first album back to the top 15. Renaissance was in the top 30, right? And that album, the crappy album, was still like 110, you know? And they brought the first album back up to number 15. So we had a top 10 single. We had 2 albums in the top 30 and another album somewhere. We just fell over 100. So we were hot. And that's when we were on tour with Hendrix. So some nights we blew Jimmy off, according to all the reviews, you know, the live reviews. And it was fun. He was a good guy. He was a fun guy. And one thing I'll always remember, when we played San Diego outside in the stadium, in those days, even as big as both of us were, we only played to 25% of the stadium, you know, which was about maybe 15,000 people, you know. And so it was an oval-shaped stadium, so we played to the quarter over here. So we were watching Hendrix, and we had to leave, so I was walking back, all the way back here to the dressing room. So when he was doing Voodoo Child, the wah-wah and the echo was echoing all through the empty seats, right, as we're walking back, and it sounded so haunting and so crazy.
Huh.
And I'll always remember that. It was just so amazing sounding.
Wow.
You know, but we had good times. We hung out with Mitch and Noel. We played the Hollywood Bowl with Jimmy.
Yeah.
And created, when we were on a Creator Like a Riot, there was a fountain in front of the stage, you know, that they used to have. They stopped it now after we played there because all the people started jumping into the fountain. You know, and there's lights in the fountain. You know, they're afraid they're going to get electrocuted. They're all on acid and stuff. Yeah. You know, so they cut our shows short, and then they put police in the front of the fountain so that nobody could jump in when Jimmy went on. You know, but there was a lot of crazy stuff. All the stuff's in my book. Stick It, My Life is Sex, Drums, and Rock and Roll.
Right, right. Now, how did you end up paying for a basically unknown Led Zeppelin to support your band on tour?
Well, that's a whole nother story. So we're talking Denver. The big promoter in Denver was Barry Fay. Right? So it was the Vanilla Fudge and Spirit was the show. Spirit opened up for us. It's about a 7,000 seat venue. That's what the big venue in Denver was at the time. And it was sold out. So our agent was also Led Zeppelin's agent, you know, and we had known Jimmy Page from the Yardbirds. We played gigs with the Yardbirds when he was in the Yardbirds. And, you know, so we had gotten a Led Zeppelin album beforehand because they wanted Led Zeppelin to open up for us. Now, you have to understand how things used to work back then. We had an attorney that represented Jimi Hendrix, Jeff Beck Group, the Yardbirds, the Rascals, Vanilla Fudge, Herman's Hermits, a few other people. So it was all like one click, you know? That's why, you know, through that is why we toured with Hendrix, you know? Through that is why we did gigs with the Yardbirds, you know? So Led Zeppelin came out, he was the rep for Led Zeppelin. So we were going to put them on other dates after Denver, you know, but we heard the new album, the first album, and we were just blown away by them. And we always used to say, who's going to blow us off? Right? Because we blew off Hendrix, The Who, all the Cream, all the big bands of the time. Now, not just us saying, these are the reviews saying it, you know?
Right.
So we said, who's going to blow us off? And guess who was? It was Zeppelin. Not that first day, but eventually. So the promoters talking to the agents, our agents, their agent, their lawyer, same lawyer. So Barry said, look, I don't need Led Zeppelin. He says, I love Jimmy, but I don't need Led Zeppelin. We're sold out. What do I need them for? So then he says, come on, it's only $1,500, you know. Give Jimmy a break. They need a break with his band. And he kept saying no. So my agent says, without even telling us, tell you what, it's $1,500. You pay $750, and the Fudge will play $750. He said, okay. So he put him on, and we ended up paying him $750. So he took off $750 of our pay, whatever our pay was at the time.
Right.
And gave it to Led Zeppelin.
Wow.
Right? And we never got it back.
Even when they blew up?
Even when they blew up, not even a mention. They probably didn't even know. You know, because those English bands, they leave everything up to the managers.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
They don't know what's going on half the time.
Yeah.
I learned that when I started playing with Jeff Beck and Rod and everything. You know?
Right.
Yeah, they have managers to do their work, dirty work or whatever work it is, you know.
Right,
They
right.
fire somebody, the manager fires it. They don't do it, you know.
Speaking of Led Zeppelin, that Mud Shark story has gone around and around and around, and I know they've been asked about it a million times, and I learned later on that you were actually there.
It was my groupie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So what's your version of the Mud Shark story?
Yeah, it's the most disgusting thing that ever happened. I mean, it's horrible. But, you know, I mean, basically, you know, the story that you heard is what happened. Except that it was my groupie. I had her, we played the Seattle Pop Festival. We had a couple of days off the day before and the day after, and something like that. And then we would fish out the windows. And that day, the day of the show, I took the chick to the festival in my limo, and you know, we had some goings on in the limo, and then back, and then I sort of got, you know, told her, you know, I had to go to bed. So she ended up somewhere else in a hotel, I don't know where. And the next day we had a day off before we had to leave. We had to leave to go to Chicago, and everybody was hanging out. So John Bonham and Richie Cole, our roadie's name was Bruce Wayne, Batman, you know.
Wow.
And John Bonham's wife was in there, you know, and they were fishing out the window. At one point, they came into our room. We were in John Paul's room, and it was me, Robert Plant, Tim Bogert, and a couple other people. And we would put the TV on before MTV. We used to put the TV on and put music on, and we were listening to Delaney and Bonnie, you know, and smoking some weed and just, you know, relaxing, you know. And then we go in there and we saw that these guys had fish in the bathtub, you know, that they caught. And then there's a knock on the door, and then it's this chick, you know. So we let her in, you know, and she's smoking with us, hanging out. And then next thing we know, they come in with the shark, and they knew she was in there, and they just started attacking her with it, taking her clothes off and going bananas. And you know, and Mark Stein had an 8mm camera, and he was filming it, you know, and it was hysterically funny because, you know, it's ridiculous. It was so ridiculous, it was funny.
Yeah.
So everybody started leaving the room. They're out in the hallway. We're laughing. We're like, oh my God, I can't, you know, we're just in shock, you know. And then the manager came down, you know. The manager came down and broke it up, right? So I said to Tim and John Paul, I said, oh, screw this, let's go to my room. So we went to my room. We ordered up some tea and crumpets. A little time passed.
Yeah.
Next thing is a knock at the door. And it's this chick again. Now she's wearing John Paul Jones' robe because she said, "What are you doing?" And he starts cursing her. "What are you doing, you bloody, you know, what are you doing in my robe?" I said, "Well, I took a shower after all that." And he said, "Get that off." So now she's sitting on my bed naked. And then there's another knock on the door, and I open the door, and it's the Fish Mirage, you know, the Fish crew again. And now they're going bananas in it, you know. Finally, after all this disgusting things going on, I said to Tim, "Let's get out of here. I got to get out of this room." And Tim says to me, "Excuse me, this is your room." I said, "Oh, good. Well, I'm going in your room." So I took all my suitcases and everything. I left my own room and went to Tim's room. I think he had 2 beds in his room, luckily. And that was the end of that. And then it became this unbelievable story because the next day we left and we ran into Frank Zappa at the airport in Chicago.
Yeah.
And we were friends with Zappa because he
Yeah.
used to open up for us a lot with the mothers, you know. I mean, that's the good thing about those days. Everybody opened up for each other. We all knew each other. Everybody made records. Records came out, got played on the radio. There were different levels of success, but everybody was playing and everybody was friends. It
Right.
wasn't like, you know, vicious like it is today.
Right.
You know? And so I said, "Oh, man, I'm really fried." He goes, "Why?" I said, "Wow, it's an unbelievable day. We had a day off," and I told him the story. He said, "Wow, unbelievable." And then we went on to wherever we were going. I think we were going to Puerto Rico or something for a festival. And a couple of months later, live at the Fillmore East comes out Mothers of Invention, which was their biggest album. And there's a song on it called Mud Shark. And he goes, "Mud Shark," and
Right.
it tells the story.
Oh,
You know?
man.
A chance meeting in the Chicago O'Hare Airport where the members of the Vanilla Fudge told Don Preston about a home movie they made at the Edgewater Inn with a mud shark.
And that
That's awesome.
created the whole thing all over again. And at the time, I had a girlfriend. She goes, "Were you involved in that?" I said, "Oh, no, not me."
Yeah, right. Right.
And then it became legendary. And I remember
Oh,
on
yeah.
VH1 and MTV, shocking moments of rock and roll. It always was like number one.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah. So whose idea was it?
What?
Whose idea was to do that?
It was probably our two tour managers, Richie Cole and Bruce Wayne, and maybe Bonzo. I don't know, but Bonzo had his wife there, so maybe
Yeah.
it wasn't his idea. But
Yeah.
all I know is they got Mark Stein with the camera to come in, so they must have planned it. You know.
Yeah.
I should ask Mark who asked him to bring the camera in.
Yeah.
And then we got, supposedly we bought that film from somebody that said it was the film because Mark had gotten rid of it. And then there was nothing on it, so we paid for the money for it for nothing.
Guys, you are watching Barside Jive with today's guest, Carmine Appice, best known for his work with Vanilla Fudge. Carmine, in 1976, you joined Rod Stewart's band, touring, recording, and co-writing 2 of Rod's biggest hits, Do You Think I'm Sexy and Young Turks. What was it like working with Rod Stewart?
Rod was great. I still love Rod. I'm still friends with him. He wrote the intro to my book. He wrote the forward, you know, and in it he said, "I fired Carmine. Fuck knows why," you know, because we really got along great together, you know, and we had a good time. And he knew that he was the big name, but after his name, I was the name after his name. So
Right.
he used to do like all the national press when we toured, and he let me do all the local press, like local radio, local newspapers. He would do People Magazine, Rolling Stone, or, you know, like TV shows that were nationwide, you know. And then one time when we went to Japan the first time, I said, "You know, Rod, I was always pretty big in Japan. BBA was really big. You know, we were the first rock band to sell out the Budokan since the Beatles, you know, and we were big, and I was always in the top 10 of drummers, top 5 of the drummers in Music Life over there. So we played Fukuoka the first night, and we did 2 nights there. And when I always did a solo. That was Rod's thing. When I came to the band, I said, "I want you to do a solo. That way I can go freshen up, change my clothes, redo my hair, and I'll come back looking fresh." I said, "Cool." He says, I know when I come back, you're gonna have the audience riled up. I go, cool. So I did that every night. So when I told him when I went to Japan, I said, you know, I'm really big in Japan. So one ear out the other, you know.
Right.
So we're doing the gig in Fukuoka. He leaves, comes back, and he says, Carmine Appice on drum. And the audience was so loud that he couldn't even hear himself saying Carmine Appice on drums. So after the show, he called me upstairs to his suite. I used to call him Howie. Like after Howard Hughes is always in the top suite of a hotel. And
Right.
Howard Hughes wouldn't go out, and Rod couldn't go out because everybody was bothered. So I used to call him Howie and go, why do you call me Howie? I told him. So I went up to see Howie, and he said, wow, I couldn't believe the response you got in your solo. He said, it was awesome. It was unbelievable. I said, I told you I was big here. So he said, you know, when we do the press conference in Tokyo, you sit next to me. You know, this way, I'm sure you'll get questions. And he was right. So we did the press conference. I sat next to him. And he was right. And there was always one guy in the band, I won't mention his name, who was so jealous of me. And he's the one that probably got me fired because he used to drink and do drugs with Rod and badmouth me to Rod, you know?
Yeah.
And it's sad because Rod fired the whole band except me. And we started a second band, and I had Rod bring this guy back because he was a guitar player. And I thought, you know, he knew all the changes. I'm the drummer. I didn't know all the changes to the songs. So to avoid these new guitar players listening to the records and listening to live shows, somebody that played the shows would have been easier. So he happened to live in LA, so we brought him back, and he ended up getting me fired. You know,
Wow.
but I love playing with Rod. I love playing with him. I just did a BBC special that's going to be released in December. It's called About the Songs. Every week they have someone else, like Police, Madonna, Metallica, Rod Stewart. And the two songs they're using for Rod Stewart is Young Turks and Do You Think I'm Sexy?
Oh,
So
wow.
they came here to my studio with a camera crew, and we did Zoom with the team in England. They're asking the questions. And we did the interview right here in front of all the gold records and everything.
Wow. Okay,
And
cool.
it's going to be on, and I played some of the grooves of both songs that they're going to use, and it's going to be on. So this kid that I'm doing this instrumental album with, we just did a rock reggae instrumental version of Do You Think I'm Sexy? All right.
Very
and it's
cool.
really, really a cool version.
Yeah.
And so I just had it mastered to analog. And I looks like we're getting a deal in the UK with the guy, Martin, that manages Yes in Asia. He's got his own label, and he loves this stuff. And he's worked with this guitar player that I'm working with. And he's called, when I sent him Sexy, he said, oh my God, it's marvelous. So I said, look, we're going to be on this BBC TV show talking about Sexy. Let's get this single ready. When that thing comes out, let's push that single out.
Right.
You have millions of people watching that show. And it's great timing. You know, timing is everything, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, so we got a lot of cool stuff going on, as well as we have a 1974 Beck, Bogert, and Appice live record that never came out. And 2 years ago, I mixed it with Jeff Beck's engineer. And there's 7 new songs on there and three songs from the first album. And it looks like we left it to Jeff's manager. So he thinks he's getting close to a deal for it.
Wow. So let me get this straight. So after Vanilla Fudge, you and the bassist Bogert, right? You guys formed Cactus.
Right,
And
which
then,
was supposed to be with Jeff Beck and Rod Stewart.
okay.
And then Rod didn't want to work with Jeff because he got fired, you know, and whatever went down.
Yeah.
And that's another story when I got Jeff and Rod back together when I was with him, you know,
Right.
with Rod. You know, that's a whole other story. All these are in the book. But anyway,
Right.
yeah, so Jeff got in a car wreck like 2 days before him and Peter Graham were on their way to New York to meet with my manager and Steve Weiss, who was the lawyer.
Right.
Right? The same lawyer, the Jeff Beck group, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, same guy.
Right.
And Jeff got in a car wreck. He always built these hot rods, and he was racing one of them and got in a wreck, put him 18 months out of commission. So me and Tim just broke up Vanilla Fudge to do Cactus. So we couldn't put it back together. So we're going, what are we going to do now? You know? So we put Cactus together without Jeff Beck, with Jim McCarty and Rusty Day.
Yeah.
And then we did that. And then like 2 years into Cactus, we got the word that Jeff still wanted to play with us. So we worked it out. We went on tour. We filled in with Jeff for, I don't know, it was called the Jeff Beck Group. We just went in and filled in. At the same time, we were playing with Cactus. So like we do 2 weeks with Jeff Beck, and then the next 2 weeks we did with Cactus. You know, it was pretty wild in those days. And then we ended up doing the Jeff Beck Group featuring Jeff, Tim, and Carmine. Right? And then we turned it into BBA, into the album. So we gradually built it into it. We didn't want it to be so hyped where people expecting unbelievable, you know, albums, and then they're disappointed no matter what their expectation is, you know?
Right.
So that's how we did it. And it lasted, you know, we had a contract for, you know, I think two albums and 2 world tours. We only did 1 album, 1 world tour. So we were going to release this album in 1974, 75, and then Tim screwed it up. And then, you know, my manager now that manages Cactus, and he's taking care of, he knew the guy that managed Jeff, and he said, what about we get this thing out? And they said, yeah. So they sent the engineer the tapes, and I engineered through the engineering and back and forth on the internet. I mixed it with Jeff engineered. And then when Jeff heard it, he said, not only is it great playing, but all the playing is humorous. Because we used to goof around in the playing, you know. Tim would do something stupid and Jeff would answer him. It was all spontaneous. Every night was different, you know. And it was, so this record sounds great. And I'm doing a lot of singing on it. Tim's singing. Jeff's playing rock with a Les Paul. It's the last time he used a Les Paul.
Wow.
So it's a unique record.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be great to hear.
I hope it comes out.
Yeah, me too. Me too. You don't have a date for that?
No, he's just working. We just got word yesterday that he's working on it. He takes a while, this guy, to get deals, but he gets great deals. So
yeah.
So my manager said, be patient. I said, look, I'm fine. I already put in my head it's not coming out. So if it comes out, I'm ahead of the game.
Yeah, it'd be a total surprise. Yeah. That's awesome.
A lot of good stuff happening.
So tell me about sharing that house with Prince.
Well, all these stories are wild, you know. It's hard to believe that they all happened to me. But I was getting divorced, one of my divorces in LA, and a friend of mine was
one of your
divorces.
divorces?
I've been married 5 times, so that's why my wife, I call her my wife, she's my girlfriend. People say, you guys gonna get married? So marry him, he'll marry anybody. And she was a radio talk show host in New York, the radio chick. She was big.
Right, I've heard that.
Yeah, and anyway, so we're still together 18 years. So
wow,
great.
That sounds like a keeper.
Oh yeah, it's a total keeper. And that's why we bought this house down here. We said, this is it. This is the last house we're buying. We're gonna die in this house. I said, okay, with me. I love it here. So anyway, so I was getting divorced, and I had a big house in Los Feliz, California, and it was like it was after playing with Rod, and it was like I played with Rod, and then I started playing I did a Derringer and a Peace record, and I did a Nugent tour, and it was about that time that my friend was with a management company called Cavallo Ruffalo Farnoli. They managed Earth, Wind and Fire, Little Feat, Denise Williams, a whole bunch of people. And they had this new act called Prince. He was called Punk Funk, right? And and this woman, Jamie, had a house, and she was having some problems financially, and she needed some money to pay some bills, you know. So I gave her some money as like a second on the house, and in return, she gave me a room in the house where I could stay, because I was getting divorced, and my ex-wife was in my big house, right? But I had another girlfriend at the time that lived down the block from Jamie's house. So I used to stay at her house mostly. So I just needed a room to put some stuff and the garage to put my Pantera, my Jaguar in, you know.
Right.
So I used her house for that. And I would go back there every once in a while. And then she said, look, do you mind if this young artist we have named Prince, he sometimes comes to LA, he hates hotels, he's very shy, and I let him stay in the house in that room. Is that cool? I said, yeah, that's fine, no problem. So that's it. So he used to stay in my room when he came to LA, and I would come home from my girlfriend's house at the time, and I'd walk in there, and he'd be listening to something. Hey, Prince, what's up, dude? You know, I'm like New York Energy, and hey, what's that? Is that your track? He goes, yep. That's it. Wow, pretty cool. Who's playing on it? Me. You playing everything? Yes. You know, that's when I first started knowing him. And then, you know,
Yeah.
I got to know him a little more. He opened up a little more.
Yeah.
You know, and then he we got to be friends. One time he needed a ride to Hollywood because he didn't want to rent cars. He always wanted somebody to drive it. So I took him for a ride in my Pantera, and it scared the shit out of him. I have to say, you know. And one time he played at the Rose Bowl when, you know, coming up with the Rolling Stones, and they booed him off the stage. And he came back to the house. He was all bummed out. Me and Jamie sat down with him. We had a cup of tea and a cup of coffee or whatever. And I said, hey, dude, don't worry about it, man. I mean, Vanilla Fudge got booed off the stage when Mamas and the Pop was the first time. It didn't hurt our career. We got big. We had hit records, gold records, everything.
Right.
Let it bother you. I said, you know, once you get a hit record, everybody forgets.
Yeah.
You know, sure enough, then he started getting bigger and bigger, and he was still in there. He just about was there when he did 1999, and then he invited me to see him. Now he's headlining Universal, and this is a shy guy, you know.
Yeah.
And I go watch him on stage. I go backstage, say hi to him. He gave me a hug. He was really friendly. And I'm watching him on stage. He comes out in women's underwear, you know, and lace, you know, stockings. And he's in the mattress on stage. He's on the stage, and he's like humping the stage. And I'm sitting with Jamie and my girlfriend at the time. I said, is this the same guy that lived in the house? This is like unbelievable. He's like so, you know, outgoing on stage, an extrovert even, versus an introvert in real life. He goes, yeah,
Right.
that's him. And
Wow.
we became friends. And then some of the drummers that played with him, you know, friends of mine, I told them,
Yeah.
hey, dude, say hi to Prince. And they come back. I see him again. I go, hey, Prince says hi back to you. I said, oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? But I got out of the circle of hanging out with him because he moved to Minneapolis. And,
Yeah.
you know, I didn't go to Minneapolis very often.
It's almost like getting booed off stage is kind of a rite of passage, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you got to get booed off stage to make it.
Yep. Yep. You're right.
You know, I hear you're really good friends with Sharon Osbourne.
Oh, yeah. I haven't talked to her since 1984 when she fired me. And I talked to Ozzy a few times. And when she was around, she sent the security guard over to get him away from me.
Why does she have such a problem with you?
Suspicious. I don't know. I mean, when we did the deal with her, we had a deal where I was, you know, I had merchandise on the tour, and I was able to do master classes in my contract, you know.
Yeah.
And she didn't like it because I was getting a lot of press, and she just didn't like it. I mean, when I was promoting my book, Carol did all my press, and we did a really big, I think it was Huffington Post or one of these things, and my headline was Carmine Appice, Sharon Osbourne. This guy is here. Hold on.
Okay.
Sharon Osbourne is the most vicious woman in rock and roll. All right.
Oh,
I'm gonna walk
wow.
outside. My roadie is here. I'm gonna just wave him to.
You need to go?
Yeah, I need to go. Yeah, but you know, we can finish if you can finish up real quick.
Okay. Well, we can finish up and we can do a part 2 someday if you want.
Well, we can do a part 2 someday. Let's do it by email. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's line it up. Let's finish it up. Oh, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. We'll finish up
Okay.
today.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry about that. I'm sitting here in my car.
Oh,
I'm
we
in
can.
my car now.
We can. We'll do a part 2.
Yeah. Let's do a part 2.
Well, don't hang up, but I'm going to kind of wrap this up, but don't hang up on me yet.
Okay, you got it.
Hey, Carmine, we sure appreciate you doing this today, and we look forward to maybe a part 2 in the near future.
Okay, dude. That sounds good, man.
Thanks, Carmine.
The zoo gives you rock for the senses. Lows that evolve into highs that pierce. Feel the rock on 98 KZEW, Dallas, Fort Worth.